Howdy, I'm glad you clicked on this video. As you can see, I'm going to be talking about the fandom of Hazbin Hotel. To those unfamiliar with internet fandoms, the Hazbin Hotel fandom has a pretty bad reputation online to say the least, often being perceived as obsessive and unreasonable. In this video, I'm going to be analyzing how specific events and trends and behaviors led to the fandom creating this cult-like following. I have a lot to go over now, so I don't want to waste your time now. So let's get started. Alright, first things first, a few disclaimers. A lot of what I'm going to be discussing here is my own analysis of the fandom. I'm going to be using as much public evidence as I can to create a narrative of the fandom over the years. However, since I'm going to be discussing years of social engineering here, there might be evidence that I might have missed, or even evidence that contradicts what I'm trying to say. I'm also going to be focusing on the general pattern of the fandom, while using specific instances as evidence. I should also state that I might be biased in my analysis. I do not like the fandom, nor do I like Vivian Madrano. So, at times, if it seems like I'm being uncharitable, I'm sorry. I will try to keep my bias to a minimum while being as objective as possible. Alrighty then, let's get into the actual analysis now. I'm gonna be doing this in chronological order, so let's start at the very beginning with the origins of the fanbase. The origins of the fanbase started off with Vivian Madrano, known by her online username as FizzyPop. FizzyPop is a online animator who uploaded her work onto YouTube, Tumblr, and DeviantArt, and the sorts. Immediately, there's some red flags there, because Tumblr and DeviantArt, they're not exactly known for having the best of audiences. They tend to have some very, let's just say, unique kind of people. The audiences there, they tend to be very vocal and passionate about things that they like very passionate. And you can actually see how these audiences migrate over the years. They start off with Tumblr, DeviantArt, but then they eventually move to Twitter after Tumblr just went downhill. And then after the 2024 election, they moved to Blue Sky, which, by the way, Blue Sky, how do you make a more toxic place than Twitter? Twitter is like the epitome of toxicity. But Blue Sky is even worse. You will never find me on Blue Sky, you hear me? I will never use that social media site. I'm getting off track. So, FizzyPop, she would upload her work on these sites. And what made her stand out early on was that she had a very unique style. It was very flowy. It popped out. It was loud. It was something where, let's say you're scrolling through social media and you saw one of her works while you're scrolling by, you instantly recognize it. Like, hey, that's FizzyPop's work. That's FizzyPop's animation. That's one of her characters. Because it was a very loud and expressive art style. Now, she would continue to upload her works over the years, her different little pieces and animations. But one of her biggest early successes was her music video Die Young, where she animated the Kesha song Die Young. And that blew up, really. So much so that even I saw that back when it first came out. If I remember correctly, I think it got 60 million views before it was taken down. So, and remember, that was when she was still relatively small. So, that did numbers. This is doing numbers. And with the success of the song, a lot of people saw her. She was on the map now. And thanks to the attention, she ended up getting connections. She ended up meeting various artists. Well, granted, she was already doing that already, but this is made everyone notice her. And over time, she would meet other artists. She would meet voice actors, musicians, and through some backdoor stuff, which I am not privy to, they eventually got together and started to work on the Hazbin Hotel pilot. I should also mention that one of her early successes as to what made her popular was the reoccurring characters that she had, like Angel Dusk and Alistair. And Vaggie, they're a recurring character that she often drew and talked about in her artwork. And like Alistair, he was a character that she had back when she was in high school. And I think that kind of came to bite her in the butt later on, because when you have characters in your head for so long, like playing them over and over again, you don't want to change them because you've held them on for so long that these characters, they are like now part of your brain now, and that changing would really like mess with you. These characters, they she played them so much that they became part of her. Now these characters she had, Alistair, Angel Dust, Faggy, something that did help make them popular early on, but would also come to bite her in the butt later, is that they're Tumblr characters. What I mean by that is these characters, they're very simple and archetypical. Alistair, he was the well-dressed serial killer. Angel Dust, he's the flamboyant, like, sexual goofball. And while you had these archetypes that made it easy to identify these characters, there wasn't really much thought put into like who they are. People can understand what they are, but they don't know who they are as people. And that's the point of making a good character. A good character should feel like a person, should feel like a personality, not just an archetype. Moving on, we're going into the production of the Hazbin pilot, the animation, voice acting, blah, blah, blah. Now, one of the animators, Ashley Nicole, she was, I think, the head line artist at the time. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But her boyfriend at the time, Michael Kovash, they would do a little stream together where she would be doing the line arts for the pilot, while Michael, he would do little voice requests. And that's important because Michael at the time was the voice actor for Angel Dusk, a fan favorite at the time. Now, while Ashley did the line art, Michael would do voice requests and do little skits as Angel Dusk. And through the donations, they'll help get a little bit extra money for the pilot. You know, something a little funding. But over time, the pilot ended up getting, not the pilot, the HuniCast, the live streams that Ashley was working on, they got a little more popular and more popular and more popular. And then other voice actors, other cast members started to hop on to the live streams as well. And that gonna make it grow even more popular. Until they probably established the HuniCast podcast. And this is where I think the biggest problem with the fandom started. I do not think that the HuniCast crew intended on doing this, but they ended up creating a very parasocial relationship with their fans. And they didn't understand that, like, the severity of what they were doing. One, they would help show off fan artworks, and that ended up encouraging fans to do even more artwork of the characters. And fan art of the characters and helped advertise the show, and that created a feedback loop where it creates more artwork and then more fans get attention, blah blah blah, loopy loop. But more importantly, the cast, being the characters, made the show a little more personal for the fans. You weren't just talking to a voice actor, you were talking to Angel Dusk. Oh, you weren't just talking to another voice actor, you were talking to Alistair. Like the Alistair. And once again, it created a very parasocial relationship with the cast and the audiences. The fans grew really attached to these characters because, one, they were able to interact with the characters in a way that no other, let's say, media did before. But also, they were trying to help fulfill a dream that a lot of artists have. With a lot of fandoms being artists, they understand that one of the biggest dreams that an artist could have is being able to tell their story to the world. Having a pilot, a show, a movie based off the characters that they had in their minds for so long. And the HuniCast podcast talked about that frequently. Like they're saying, they talked about how the funding for the show or funding for, or the donations, I'm sorry, the donations from the live streams would go to the show, or donations would go to charity events. And they end up advertising as, hey, this isn't just like a job for us. It's like the dream. A dream that so many artists have, something that if we can fulfill would change indie animation. And so it created this idea in the fans that, no, this isn't just a regular show. This is something far greater. This is something I can help with, something I can be a part of. And so when the pilot came out, it was a big event. Like, when the fans managed to get their hands on it, they talked about it nonstop. They created so much fan work. They ended up creating so many buzz that was in everyone's recommendation for a long time. And even like big names like MatPat, other review channels, they end up seeing it, which end up making it even more popular. Blah blah blah. To the fans, it wasn't just another video or another animation. It was something unique. It was something important that, and they helped create it. But let's say we exclude the fans for a moment. What made the pilot so popular? Well, it was honestly a first of its kind, really. It was a pilot. Like, truly a pilot. A pitch to the world saying, hey, we have a story that we want to tell. We have these characters that we want to explore. And we have the story that would interest you. Now, animations being uploaded to the internet has existed since pretty much the dawn of the internet. It's everywhere. But this was really a first of its kind. Something that said, hey, we want to go beyond just being internet artists. We want to be with the big boys. We want to go up and beyond. We want to climb the ladder. And a lot of people enjoyed a good underdog story. They thought, hey, this like ragtag team of artists working together in order to create a story that could like rival that of Hollywood. That brought a lot of attention. And a lot of the attention came from fan support. Again, with a fan art and so much buzz around it. With the pilot being this symbol of indie trying to go big and to fulfill the dream, there's the sense that the fans had some sort of duty to fulfill that dream. I've said it again and again. A lot of the fans were themselves artists, like small-time artists that also have that dream. It's a very common dream for artists to have, to go big. But they either don't have the means to or the connections. But with Hazbin Hotel, if this show could get success, maybe they could get success too. And it did shift indie animation. Like, more than ever, you're seeing more and more indie pilots being turned out. And that is because of Hazbin Hotel. It gave a lot of people hope that indie animation, it doesn't have to be just for like a small YouTube channel that someone uploaded for fun. It could actually be something different, something unique. And to me, it's sad how it has been turned out because of that dream. Hazbin Hotel is the symbol of a dream that everyone had, but then it's spat in the face of for the fans, ironically. And I'll get to that soon. But since I'm talking about the fans already, what kind of people did the show attract? Well, all right, listen. I know this looks bad, but please let me explain. What you have to understand is a good Hazbin Hotel fan is a Twitter artist. And to those who use Twitter, already know what the average Twitter artist is like. The fans, they are people that are searching for identity. They're a combination of like outskirts of rejects from normal society that band together because of what they are. Not who they are, what they are. These people, they feel like they don't have a regular place in society. And so they try to latch onto places that accept them no matter what. Because of what they are, not who they are. And I really have to emphasize that. What they are is, let's say, a queer man, a lesbian, a trans man, trans woman. That's what they are. Instead of who you are. Are you an honorable man? Are you a little prankster? Are you a very serious person? And that is something I feel like very radical people do not know in themselves. And I really have to emphasize this. This is not the average like LGBTQ person. I don't care if you're a queer man, a lesbian, a trans man, trans woman, pansexual, ace. That's not the problem here. Because as long as you understand who you are as a person, that is fine. The problem arises when you try to figure out what you are and then use what you are as a substitute for a personality. Now, the HuniCast and like the cast, they make it very evident as to the political leanings, and they are very accepting of the LGBTQ fanbase. However, they, let's just say they end up attracting a group of people that, like I mentioned, are searching for a place to call home, and so they end up bringing a lot of people that come because they feel accepted for what they are instead of who they are. And upon exploring the Hazbin Hotel, the characters, they try to use the show as a substitute for personality. I really don't want to seem cruel in this. I'm just trying to trying to be as honest as possible. And I feel like this is a problem that the LGBTQ community has, where they focus so much on identity that they don't allow the personality of individuals to be the focus. I remember back in the day that the whole goal of the LGBTQ and pride parades were to show, hey, we are human too, we are people too. But then over time, it's shifted away from that and saying like, hey, I'm a queer man, I am a lesbian, this is what I am. And I think that has done a lot of harm to the LGBTQ community because you don't show them, hey, we're human, we are people. And this problem isn't just isolated to the LGBTQ community either. Artists have the problem too. I feel like that a lot of artists, they put so much value on the fact that they are an artist, that they are an artiste, that they tie it so much that to their identity that they become extremely defensive. A good example should be AI art. Now, I am not here to defend AI art. I do not think it should replace artists because I believe art is a human medium. Art is about expression. It's about communication. Something deeper than just a pretty image. But in recent years, when AI art started to get better and better, you saw this flux of artists that were just like dogmatically hating on AI. Like the moment they saw it, they were like, they dogpiled on it. Like this is trash. This is garbage. This is demon tech. And to an outside perspective, where someone who doesn't really have a say in the game, they think, my goodness, you guys are insane. And that passion that the artists have come from them placing so much emphasis on them being artists as their identity instead of something they do as a job or as a hobby. Now, granted, I don't want AI to replace artists. I don't want people to lose their jobs. But I'm just using this as an example to show how much people latch on to art as their identity. I I think a good character in a person should be how you do things. Art is something that can help explore who you are, but the way that you go about art tells me more about you than the fact that you do art. Like art style, like how do you do art style? What do you draw? What's your method in sketching? What's this, what's that? Something you can do and something can show how you do things or how you explore the world. That is personality. And I think art is a way for people to figure out how they can express that. Art is an expression, and I can understand people be upset about that. But it's not everything. It is just a tool for you to express yourself, not the expression itself. I'm getting slightly off track again, I'm sorry. But with so many people who are artists and people are LGBTQ community, they did not see the show as just another show. They saw it as a part of themselves, really. Something that they grew so attached to, something that they locked their identity to, and they want it to succeed because if the show succeeds, in a way, they too succeed as well. All right. So, you know my thoughts on the fans and why I think that they are so fanatically loyal to the show. But what about the average viewer? Because those tens of millions of people who saw the original pilot, a lot of them weren't initially fans of the show. So what attracted them to the pilot? And I think there's a few key reasons as to why. One is that Hazbin Hotel takes something that a lot of people are familiar with and twist it in a way that seems unique. A lot of people, especially in the Western world, they are very familiar with heaven and hell. They know what hell is supposed to be, or at least they have a caricature, despite how inaccurate it is. They at least are familiar with hell. And people tend to lean towards things that they are familiar with. That's just how they are. And when they see a show that's based off hell, not only is it something that they're familiar, the way that hell is depicted in Hazbin Hotel is also unique. It brings up the question, hey, can sinners be redeemed? That is a question that has been brought up throughout history many times before, but this is one that I feel like has never been brought up in the mainstream before. And this interesting idea, redeeming sinners, attracts people. They expect, okay, so outside this pilot, there's going to be more in the future. There's going to be more content awaiting. So that attracts people to stay. Using hell as a basis for your world building, congratulations, you did like half the world building already. Biblical lore is very interesting, to say the least. It has a lot of rules and stuff that we come to understand. And since people are familiar with it, people already know how hell works. Hell is a place where the worst of the worst people go. This is where bad people go. So, and you also know that, hey, you can't exactly die in hell, so there's a lot of immoral people. You don't know, like, how many old civilizations are down there. Unfortunately, in the final show, they don't really show a whole lot of that, but during the pilot, it brought up the question. The premise of Redeeming Sinners has a lot of potential. It has something that can interest people because people know, hey, this has a lot of potential in it. As for the story itself, the characters in the pilot, they were loud and basic. And I want to say that in a good way, kind of. What I mean by that is that you have, let's say, Charlie. She is the Disney princess in hell. She is happy-go-lucky. She tries to see the best in people. But it also shows that she has daddy issues, of a very common thing that is going to be very occurrent within Fivsy Pop shows. And Angel Dusk, he's the sex joke guy. And you got Alistair, the serial killer with a constant smile, who's scheming for something we don't know yet. They give you enough of the character in order to create a profile, but at the same time not giving you enough that you have a idea of what the character actually is. And this creates a lot of wiggle room for the audience. If you want to believe in something about a character that you like, you could just believe it. If you believe, let's say, in a potential future where Angel Dusk and Alistair got together, that's a very popular ship. That was a very popular ship back in the day. And you can see in the chart that a lot of people, they like to imagine dynamics between characters that haven't been showcased yet. This graph right here came out just a little bit after the pilot. We don't even know most of the characters by this time. And to the average audience, they were pretty much toys for the people to play with. They weren't really people, they were toys. And this goes back to the Tumblr-esque characters, where you have an idea of what they are, but you don't actually know them. So the audience fills in the rest. And they can fill it up with any idea that they find interesting. Now, there are obviously more lore to these characters. However, you'll have to go into live streams, old posts, old artworks that may or may not be canon. So you have this weird dynamic where you have old fans who are familiar with the old lore, who end up having to teach the new fans about the old lore so that they could catch up. But also new fans that have only seen pilot and are unfamiliar with the old lore and don't want to know about the old lore because the old lore may not be canon anymore. And this problem of the fans being able to fill in the gaps, this is going to become a reoccurring problem again and again, especially with Helluva Boss and the full release of Hazbin Hotel. Another way that the show got so popular was that it was on YouTube. Pretty much everyone and their mother has YouTube, and it's also free. Like, you don't need to do anything. You could just go onto Google, search up Hazbin Hotel, boom, you can watch it for free. And this allowed like really strong word of mouth because anyone can watch it. Anyone could talk about it. Anyone could tell their friends to go watch it. So you can see it anywhere. And you can notice it in YouTube recommendation. When the Hazbin Hotel pilot first came out, it was on YouTube recommendation for like weeks. So, and front page too. So everyone saw it. And it being on YouTube, you're able to catch up easily. Let's say your friends are talking about it, but you don't know. You could just go onto YouTube, watch 30 minutes, spend 30 minutes watching the pilot, and you're up to speed. But as I mentioned, there's a lot of like emphasis to go watch it. I've said it again and again, but the fans, like the really radical fans, they are very fanatical with the show. And they talked about it again and again and again. You could not escape Hazbin Hotel for like the longest time. You can suspect that a lot of people, they had this feeling of FOMO, fear of missing out. Because you have a extremely popular media that is currently trending, and everyone is talking about it, everyone says they love it, and you might feel like you're missing out on something if you don't go watch it, you don't join in the fun. But then when you do watch it, there has other things that in the pilot itself that encourages rewatches and interactions. Obviously, as a pilot, it won't tell you everything about a story, but as Matt Pat once said it, this 30-minute long video has enough enough plot hooks and speculation to last an entire season. And that speculation and theories encourage people to interact with one another, encourages people to talk about the show, to have the show in your mind at all times. And when you do that, it boosts the show into the algorithm. Since there's so many people focusing on the show at once, YouTube's gonna boost it so that they can get the most engagement out of it and so get the most money through ad revenue. Plus, the pilot was a musical. There were several songs throughout the pilot that people took the songs out of the pilot and put it in their like meme compilations or comic compilations, so that something about the song is always following people along. And even if you don't watch like meme compilations or comic compilations, listening to the songs and again, because admittedly the songs in the pilot were pretty catchy, having it in your head constantly again and again, and has the show seep into your mind, like plant roots in it, so that it is like a solid presence in your mind, something that you can easily remember. And the most important thing about the pilot was that activity breeds attention. Social media, as I said, they really just care about interactions and activity because it shows, hey, there are people online, people are talking about something. While they're there, we can show them ads and collect their data. And with the fans being extremely passionate about the show, like obsessively so, they would not stop talking about the show. There's thousands of fan arts, thousands of threads, thousands of this, thousands of that. People kept on talking about it. And when you make content, especially fan content, people watch those fan content, and those fan contents get boosted up, and that creates more engagement. And when people watch fan content, they might be inspired to make their own fan art, and you create this feedback loop of fan content, activity, attention, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The Hazbin Hotel fandom is perfect for this. It constantly reinforced itself through fan songs, fan content, fan art, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until it's like a new cornerstone of the internet. And you know for sure the corporations, they're gonna support it because they just want money. Activity and attention breeds cash. So that's why you had YouTube boost it into the algorithm, because they understand, hey, this is something that is extremely popular and extremely active. Something that a lot of people are gonna make fan art and fan content on YouTube and other platforms. So let's boost it so that we can get even more money. It's a win-win for the show, the fans, and the corporations. Alright, so I talked about Hazbin a lot and the fandom. Let's shift courses towards Helluva Boss, because Helluva Boss takes place in the same universe and is also owned by FivzyPop. And while there's not 100% overlap between Hazbin fans and Helluva Boss fans, FivzyPop fans watch both of them. So I believe we can still use this as a important, let's say, tool of measurement for the fan base. Shortly after the release of Hazbin Hotel's pilot came the Helluva Boss pilot. And the whole premise of the show was imps, they go onto Earth in order to kill people for money. And it was kind of a way for the creators to show off more world building, but at the same time also occupy the fans for Hazbin Hotel, because Hazbin Hotel would obviously take years to produce. But it wouldn't also just help occupy the fans, but it could also help the writers figure out, okay, so this works, this doesn't work in the writing, or at least that's how you're supposed to do it. But in our case, we can use it to help analyze the fandom during the time, seeing how as the episodes released, the fandom shifted and went around, seeing how it evolved over time. I also have to note that FivzyPop pretty much has full control over the show. Granted, since it's gonna be on YouTube, you can't show certain things without some censorship, but the episodes, they seem to be completely fine without the censorship. In fact, I think I remember some of them getting ads, so they're still monetized. So Season 1 was important because each episode was like a little event. Like OMG, the first episode of Helluva Boss came out, Murder Family, hooray! But also, each episode took months to come out. And that's also very important because by making sure, well, obviously animation takes a long time, but also by releasing it after month, like having months between gaps, you can hold an audience for a really long time. Especially a fan base that is extremely loyal. You have them there for so long that they make Helluva Boss like something that they always have in their mind in the background. By just constant exposure for such a duration, you can have something stick in people's minds for a really long time afterwards. By just dragging it out. Now, Season 1, it kind of did the things that you expect a Season 1 of show meant for world building to do. It introduced the world, introduced some characters, tried to explore the world. But something that happened in Season 1 that will continue in Season 2 is that they constantly introduced new characters and plot lines. Like, it seems like every episode there was a new character that would have major importance down the line. And not only would that create more content for people to make fan content with, like every character, congrats, you have a new character they can play with and make a whole bunch of fan art of. But the new plotline means, hey, there's always something else that I can focus on. If I don't like this plotline, I can always look on this plotline. But later on, you'll see that hey, there's so many so often, and they keep on making more and more that you don't expect them to come back to those anytime soon. But during season one, it didn't seem like a problem because those problems hadn't arisen yet. But I do have to focus. I do have to highlight that yes, each episode it created new characters and new plot lines because it gave the fans something to play with for that month or for those months. It might not. I know it's not just me, but from season one to season two, there was a huge shift in priority. The Stolitz ship, the ship between Blitz and Stolas, was a fan favorite even during season one. But I don't know if it was fully intentional or if it was planned or they shifted to the Stolitz show. But it might have been the creators and Vivian Madrano. She saw how much the fans loved the Stolitz ship that she shifted the show in order to appease the fans. Show change the show into this instead of a dark comedy about demons killing humans for money. You become this soap opera between a high royal and a peasant, pretty much. And you can tell that they really contradicted themselves hard when it comes to shifting the show. Season 2, Episode 1, The Circus. Oh my goodness, that was one of the first episodes that made me realize, yeah, I don't like this show anymore. I don't like this show. Because in season 2, Episode 1 was already responsible for a bunch of controversy. But it was obvious that they were trying to clean up Stolas so that it'll be easier to market the idea of Blitz and Stolas getting together. In season 1, it was obvious that Stolas was abusing his power and his authority and status in order to get in bed with Blitz. And Blitz had to put up with it so that he can get the grimoire, so that he can have a business, so that he wouldn't just be another peasant, essentially. And yeah, that's messed up. That's a messed up ordeal. And since this is supposed to be a adult show, you will suspect, okay, they should tackle it. Show like, hey, this is a bad situation. But in season 2, episode 1, they backtracked hard. They made it so that Stolas' wife was beating him, that he had a terrible childhood, that Blitz and Stolas were actually childhood friends, that it was some sort of big misunderstanding. And somehow Stolas is only like 35. My brother, you're not even middle-aged. In season 1, episode 2, you were saying like you're some ancient, even though you're not even in your 40s. You're like 35. You're not even there at a midlife crisis yet. You're not supposed to have a midlife crisis yet. That's like for another decade. And also, aren't you guys supposed to be immortal? This is what I mean by contradicting itself. It backtracked so hard because it seems like they wanted to fulfill what the fans wanted. The fans wanted Stolas and Blitz to get together. But the showrunners and writers, they understood that the way that they currently had Stolas and Blitz act was not ideal. And so they rewritten the show in order to make it and brute force the relationship. Now, I know that they're in the end of season 1 at Aussies, they were hinting at, hey, maybe Stolas is catching feelings for Blitz. Maybe they could make it work. But there's going to be a lot of drama. Maybe that was the entire plan from the beginning. But for whatever reason, they had to hard shift in order to get it on, to get the relationship now instead of eventually. Because the fans wanted it. They were trying to appease the fans. And this brings a lot of consequence with it. When you're there to appease the fans, there's an idea that the fans have of the characters and what they're supposed to do that the writers they fear changing the characters too much, because if they change the characters too much, then they won't be the same characters the fans fell in love with, and the fans might leave. In season 2, the characters, they are somehow both very stagnant, but also change dramatically. As I stated earlier, like with Stolas and Blitz, like Stolas, his character changed dramatically. However, like the general dynamic between Blitz and Stolas remains the same. It's a constant will they, won't they, will they, won't they. And you can't change those characters because that's what the fans like. They want that tension. They want the dynamic that they fell in love with. And if you change that, they might lose interest in what brought them in. I feel like that's also a problem with Moxie, Millie, and the other side characters. Millie, she doesn't have any development, really. I think she got like one episode. Honestly, I don't really... No, she only got a short where she really had time to express herself. And a flashback in episode 10. Millie remains stagnant. She does not change. And the same with Moxie. Moxie, he remains the same, more or less. Sure, he changes a little bit, but the core of his character is still the same. He hasn't meaningfully changed because the fans have an idea of what Moxie is, and they want it that way. And remember how I mentioned how they kept on introducing more and more characters? Well, they kept on doing it in season 2. Add more characters, add more plot lines, add more this, add more that. Because since a lot of fans, they also consume a lot of fan content, a lot of fan artists, they want more characters to play with, more characters to draw with, more characters to have animations of. So each episode, the reason why they're adding or at least that's why I think they're adding so many characters, is that it's so that each episode has something new for the fans to draw, to get attached to. A new toy that they can play with, but then forget 5 minutes later. And this constant need to... and it becomes very evident when the showrunners are just making stuff up. As I mentioned in season 2, episode 10. They just make up the fact that, oh, Blitz and Millie, apparently they're best friends. We barely see them interact, but oh yeah, they're best friends. What? I should also highlight that the first half of season 1 and the second half of season 2, there was a several month gap between the two. And the teaser for season 2, the first teaser, the animatic, it only showed scenes from season 1. So it means that they weren't working on the second half of season 2 until later on. So I'm confident in saying that somewhere during production of season 2, they changed something in order to appease the fans. Or somewhere after the season 1, they changed something. I know that they changed something. They changed it to appease the fans. And you do not make a good story by constantly appeasing the fans. You tell a good story by telling a good story. And with the second half of season 2, they pretty much doubled down on trying to appease the fans. They followed what the fans wanted. They wanted like big, more stolets. They wanted more toys. Worst of all, they wanted to be more emotionally manipulative and dumb it down more. Previous slide. Season 2, episode 10 is currently the worst performing Helluva Boss episode, sitting at only 13 million. Yeah, only 13 million. I know people who would literally kill for those views, but when you compare that to the early seasons, like season 1, where you got like 50, 60 million, 70 million, that is not much. And unfortunately, it seems like by following what the fans want, it is still rewarding them. Season 2, episode 11 and 12, they are primarily Stolitz episodes. And in those episodes, like episode 11, they bring in all the 7 deadly sins, a big grand show, and that created a lot more toys for the fans to play with, a lot more speculation. Oh, why are they like this? How are they like this? Blah blah. And what's most frustrating is that they also dumbed it down. The episode 11, they have so many contradictions. Like, why not just ask Stolitz, hey, what happened during that night? And not just have him, like, proclaim, oh yeah, I'm the mastermind. He literally just says, yes, I'm the mastermind. I'm not going to explain my plan. I'm not going to do what I'm the mastermind of. I'm just the mastermind. Without explanation, and somehow he gets in trouble. It is frustrating. It is so frustrating. This is why I do not like the shows. I'm sorry for being so biased during this. but it is evident that the fans are getting what they wanted, and the writers are bending their backs. They are pretty much snapping their backs to appease the fans, because the writers know that the fans like the stolid stuff. They like the big flashy stuff. They like the soap opera, and unfortunately, it worked. Episode 11 and 12, they have more views than episode 10. Episode 10 was like 13 million. 11 and 12, they're like 15, 16 million. So there was a boost in those episodes because those were the big flashy episodes. Those were the Stolitz episodes. Despite how bad the Stolitz ship is, people liked it, unfortunately. And it's obvious that the writers just want to appease the fans because, hey, if you have loyal fans, they're gonna buy those overpriced plushies. Alright, I'll have to eventually come back to the show, so let's just rip the band-aid off. I'd made my opinions on the show prevalent in my previous 2 videos, especially the Dead World of Hazbin video. The summary of those videos are, I feel like the show had a lot of potential, but if fumbled it in order to appease the fans, or to be as popular as it can. It does that by kind of gutting the heart and soul of the show and just replacing it with flashy imagery, like simple characters, archetypes, all for the sake of pleasing the fans and making sure they don't really think, or at least have to think as hard. The premise of the show, trying to redeem sinners, they don't really actually cover that. Sure, you have angel dust, you have serpentines, but when you're trying to redeem someone who is down in hell, it is important to understand who they are as a person, what series of events led them to making specific decisions, what is like their soul like. Having to understand that, hey, what they did was wrong, but they can be better. But the show just completely abandons that. To me, I think that's because they don't want the audience to think as much, because if you force the audience to think, they won't have more time to enjoy the show. If you can just mindlessly enjoy the show, you're probably going to think, oh, it's the best thing ever. But then when you start to think, you realize, hey, there's a lot of flaws in this show. Granted, if you enjoy the show, that's completely fine. That is completely fine for you if you genuinely do enjoy the show, because there are things in the show that are worth enjoying. That's fine by you. But you have to understand that the show guts itself in order to appease the fans and to please an audience. It is trying to be popular, not good. And you can also tell that they are gonna try to drag out their audience for as long as possible, because they are constantly like egging the audience, like, oh hey, there's some things that we're foreshadowing things gonna happen in season 2, 3, or 4. We don't really have any substantial evidence as to what those things are. It's just, oh yeah, there are things gonna be in the future. Sure, Lilith, Eve, Alistair, sure, there's stuff about the future, but like, what's the context behind that? We don't really have a solid core to what they're egging people on. And it just seems like key jingling. Hey, there's gonna be stuff in the future. There's gonna be stuff in the future. Still stay along. It's a mystery box at the end of an episode. A little cliffhanger that constantly eggs you on, constantly encourages you, hey, go check out the next episode if you want to solve that mystery that we left in the previous episode. And it just feels like a very cheap way of engaging with an audience. And to me, worst of all, I feel like the show tries to excuse terrible behavior in the show. I mentioned this with Angel Dusk in my previous video, where he's not exactly a great guy. Like, he sexually harasses the other members. He's very crude, doesn't care about what others think. However, instead of having him like confront it and say, like have him say, "Hey, I'm sorry for my behavior," like confront it, they try to excuse it by having him with a relationship with Valentino. And once again, I don't want to undermine his struggle because it's a very real struggle that I know a lot of people suffer from. It's just that in the show, it definitely feels manipulative. And this what the show feels like. It is very manipulative. When a character says something bad, they excuse it with, "Oh, they have a terrible backstory," or "Oh, they're actually a sad boy," or "Oh, they actually have a pure heart underneath all the miles of ash." It doesn't confront the characters on their bad decisions. It just excuses it. And I feel like people who don't want to admit their own wrongdoings fall back on this like constantly. They don't want to admit, hey, they did something wrong. They want to make excuses. And in the show, it is making a lot of excuses for the characters. And that becomes worse when you tie in the fans. Because with the fans, they'll see the behaviors of the characters and think, oh, if I have like a traumatic backstory or an excuse, I don't really have to change myself, or I don't really have to apologize. And that does not make a healthy fan base. People are shaped by the media they consume, and Hazbin Hotel, as a media, does not shape people into being better people, despite what it tries to say. And going back to the character designs, I've said it again and again in the in the Helluva Boss section, but the characters feel like toys. The cast of Hazbin, they feel like flat personalities where you get a general gist of what they're supposed to be like, but nothing more. There's no like internal paradox in a character where if you solve it out, you can realize, oh, it creates a bigger character, like a more complex character. No, what you see is what you get, and that's about it. Now, for most shows, that'll be a bad decision. However, for Hazbin Hotel, since you have a fan base where a lot of fans do a lot of heavy work when it comes to characterization, that's a great decision because when you have simple characters that have a lots of wiggle room for how you interpret characters, people can just project character traits that they like onto them. It doesn't have to be canon. It doesn't even have to. It doesn't need to even have evidence in the show. People are just willing to project things onto these characters. The amount of characters too is important because instead of having like a smaller group of people where you a small group of characters where you're able to focus on each and every one of them and have like a proper analysis of the characters and tell a story with those characters, they just constantly throw new character, new character, new character, new character. And it serves both two functions. One, the writers understand that the characters that they have written don't really have a lot of personality, so you have to constantly throw in new characters with different personalities in order to seem like, oh, the show's more complex than it actually is. And two, more toys for the fans. More characters means more fan art means more engagement means more money. And to play devil's advocate, I must admit, the character designs are nice. Granted, they don't really work as character designs, but they're nice in fan art. People like to complain about how noisy and like how overly complex the characters' designs are for animation. And that, to me, I don't think it's 100% true, but I can definitely see the argument for that. However, the designs work perfectly for drawings and fan art. They are just the right level of complexity that an artist will have a lot of fun drawing it. They have to put attention to their work and they can engage with it while not being too simple that it becomes boring. They hit a good Goldilocks zone of difficulty and simplicity that a lot of fan artists can draw it and have fun while drawing it. That way, you know the cycle now. More fan art, money. Ugh. My boy Adam, my boy. Moral deflection. I've already mentioned this about the excuses, but the characters, they don't really have to face the consequences of their terrible behavior. However, the antagonists of the show, they end up becoming the scapegoat for the characters. The decision to make it so that no one knows how to get to heaven is both incredibly stupid and genius at the same time. Because, well, it's stupid because, one, how does anyone even know how to get to heaven? Two, there's a giant book explaining. Three, where's God? There's a whole laundry list of explanations why that's a bad idea. But it's also genius in a meta standpoint because then you can have an excuse saying, hey, heaven is corrupt, heaven is unjust. Which also contradicts the premise of the show, but bear with me. For meta reasons, that is very appealing. It makes it seem like there's injustice, that there's a wrongdoing being imposed onto the characters, which creates more excuses for the characters to have bad behavior. I do have to mention that the bad guys of the show, Adam, Loot, Heaven, they focus on the identities of the characters. Like Adam, he's a narcissistic, womanizing sexist. Loot, she dismisses the hotel because they're a bunch of sinners. They focus on the identity of the characters, and you have to remember the audience that the show is focused on. The fans, or at least the more obsessed fans, they latch onto identity. And so, when a villain attacks a character for their identity, it creates a more visceral reaction within the fans. The villains of the show, you could say, are the bigots, people intolerable to others. And that is a common trope that a lot of people of, let's say, the demographic that Hazbin attracts, they try to fight against the biggest stereotype. And I don't want to project an umbrella across everyone, or across a large group of people, but I feel like the biggest stereotype is or the biggest villain is what those type of fans like hate the most, because they searching for a place that they want to belong, and the bigot is the one who rejects others, and so they fight against the bigot in order to be accepted. But you should keep in mind that people, they view morality in contrast. If you give them two bad choices, but one choice is significantly worse than the other, the people are going to see the less bad choice as a good choice. People work on contrast. And the same thing with morality. If your main character does something bad, they can appear good if they just make the villains even worse. And that's what they did in the show. Instead of trying to make the characters actually good, they made them bad. Which, okay, fine. I can understand the characters starting off bad, but you have to make them understand what they're doing is bad and then become good. But in the show, they don't really become good. They just have a villain that's worse than all of them, so that in contrast, they appear good. What do I think is the foreseeable future with the fandom and the Helluva verse? Well, a few months ago, it was announced that Helluva Boss was also being picked up by Amazon Prime, and that they were going to help fund the show and produce it. Though they said that Fibsy Pop, she's gotta have all her creative freedoms that she wants, which, though I don't think that is 100% true. Because when you have someone that is funding your show, they're going to have expectations. They're going to have deadlines. Hey, we want you to do this. We want you to do that. Because we are giving you the money. This is our money and we want to expect a return. So while people may think, oh, hey, the shows are gonna be upgraded, I I don't think it's an exact upgrade. I think it's a side grade towards something where there's got to be more expectation placed on the show, and they are gonna have to actually think things through, not because they want to, but because they have to, because they have people above them that are putting money on the show and have actual expectations. Now there are proper consequences. But when you have Amazon Prime funding your show, Amazon, Bezos, it doesn't exactly feel like indie anymore. People like to think that Hazbin Hotel, Helluva Boss, they're like the face of indie. But not really, not anymore. Heck, Helluva Boss wasn't even indie by the end of season 1. But, like, I think it's Truth Seekers. Yeah, season 1, Truth Seekers. They were outsourcing some of their animation, which by definition doesn't make them indie anymore. Yeah, they were outsourcing their animation in season 1. So not only is it no longer indie, but YouTube, they might not handle or treat Helluva Boss with the same level of delicacy anymore. I think a few weeks after like a couple days or a few weeks after the Amazon Prime announcement. To those who are unfamiliar with what happened with Season 2, Episode 11, Mastermind, it is now age restricted. Surprisingly. And this did happen like a couple weeks to like a month or two after the announcement. Now, I'm going to put my tinfoil hat here and do a little bit of conspiracy theory. Or conspiracy thinking. I think the reason why YouTube did that was because they are no longer exclusive with Helluva Boss. You think that due to it being a adult show, a lot of the episodes are either going to be demonetized or age restricted due to it saying, hey, we're 18 plus show. But no, a lot of the episodes are not age restricted. But after the Amazon Prime announcement, Mastermind got age restricted. Now, why Mastermind? I don't know. It's not really that bad compared to the other episodes. But to me, I think it's like a threat. Saying, hey, since you are no longer exclusive with us, we're not going to be treating you with the same kid gloves that we have for so long. So I don't see this exactly as a bailout by Amazon. I just see this as more cooks in the kitchen trying to handle what's going on with the show. Do I expect things to change, though? Not really. Season 2 of Hazbin Hotel was announced and had already started production before Season 1 even aired. That is a massive red flag for me. Because that shows like overconfidence on a show. And with Helluva Boss and the Hazbin Hotel pilot, there's not a lot of work that really signifies confidence. Like, there's nothing that really warrants this level of confidence on a show. Heck, Invincible didn't get renewed for a second season before season 1 even finished. Invincible didn't get a second season, or it wasn't greenlit for a second season until after season 1 aired. Despite how good Invincible is. And I think I know why. They knew that the fans are willing to eat up whatever is given to them. The show is popular despite it not being good. And the fans will keep on eating it up. And when you start producing season 2 before season 1 even airs, then you don't have time to learn. If they announce season 2 after season 1, they can look back at season 1, see the complaints of season 1, figure out, hey, maybe we should have changed this, we should have done that, and then learn from their mistakes. But they did not. They started working on season 2 before season 1 even aired. So all the mistakes in season 1, they're gonna continue onto season 2. Because you never gave your time the chance to actually learn, the chance to hear what people complain on, or complaining about the show. So I do not think the show is going to improve in season 2. I just think it's going to be more of the same thing. Now, with everything that I've discussed so far, what do I think are the core problems with the fan base? And like general flaws that I haven't already mentioned. One, the shows that they latch onto, the fans, the shows appeal instead of challenge. There's not really a lot of thought needed to put into the shows because the fans, they do a lot of the hard work. The characters are flat, so they're easy to project traits on, so you can imagine the characters being whatever you want them to be, as long as they like fit in the general category. The show don't really challenge the audiences by like confronting the idea of redemption or what it means to be a better person or the dynamics of power, like massive power imbalances. They don't really address that. The shows are just flashy and noisy for clips and edits. The shows are just made to have a fandom. There's no real substance for people to actually latch onto. No heart, no soul. And the fandom, it is pretty volatile. Like they are known for controversy and like drama nonstop. And in a way, I think it was also intentional. I'm saying that a lot. The drama, the overflow of drama, I think is also intentional because you constantly introduce drama, 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 drama. That the fans, they're gonna get desensitized to that. And when some of the drama is just unfounded at times or has very little substantial evidence, then the fans, they're gonna learn to just ignore the drama. But this also makes fans very defensive of the show, making it so that if they see actual criticism, they're just gonna think it's bad faith and that, oh hey, you're just jealous of 50 Pop's fame. You're just a hater. The fans, due to all the drama drowning, become super defensive and desensitized to actual criticism towards the show. It's like a self-imposed victim mentality used to defend itself against actual criticism. And that is a very interesting social group. Social group? Whatever. I just find that very interesting how they create a self-imposed drama in order to defend itself. They attacked itself to learn how to defend itself. However, due to the drama drowning, it ends up making them isolated from the rest of the internet. The fandom is best what I could best describe as a closed fandom. You have a population of fans. Fans that like the show. However, due to all the drama that is tied around the shows, tied around the fans, no one wants to go into the fandom. They don't really want to explore the fandom. Unless they are already familiar with the shows or the fandom, they're not gonna come into the fandom. And also, the fans, they don't go out towards other social groups. You, I know this because whenever a new episode of Helluva Boss comes out or season 1 of Hazbin came out, sure, you saw memes of the shows. Like, that's kind of happen. When a very popular media comes out, there's going to be memes of it. However, a good comparison, Invincible. It's a very popular show, so you're going to see a lot of memes. But you don't just see the memes in the Invincible community. You see the memes spread out into other corners. You can see how the fans, they have other things besides Invincible. They also like this show, they also like that show. But they like to combine those shows by introducing memes from Invincible into those communities. It spreads. Those fandoms spread. But the Hazbin and Helluva Boss fans do not spread. They don't bring memes onto other squares of the internet. They are locked in the same space. They have their corner and do not leave that corner. And so people aren't exposed to Hazbin and Helluva Boss like they used to back when the Hazbin pilot first came out. Now, the fans that they have, that's all they have. And they have to make do with the fans they have. That's why they are so, they are struggling to keep the fans locked in because there's no real draw towards the show. You don't have an influx of coming in and coming out. You only have fans leaving. There's no flux. There's no flow of new fans coming in. So the fandom is going to shrink, and shrink over time until no one is watching the shows. That is why they are trying so hard to keep the fans locked down. Because they know there's no actual draw towards the shows. And so they have to milk whatever fans they have for all they have. This part of the video is not exactly connected to the fandom, but it's something that I wanted to talk about as well. And that's, like, who do I think Vivian Medrano is as an artist? And I'm gonna have to say this again and again and again. Do not go harass her, please do not. Sure, she has done some stuff that I do not like, but that does not give you the excuse to be cruel to her. And in cases like this, I do not think being cruel to her will be advantageous to anyone in the long run. And I think it will actually make things worse. But having said that, there's something I noticed with her art and the way that I think she thinks. The way that she thinks, at least from what I can tell, is she can see the flow and form of something, but not its nature. I believe that an art style can reflect the way that someone's mind works. And looking at Vivian Medrano's art, it's very loud, it's very flowy, it has unique silhouettes, but looking at it, it feels flat. Like there's no depth to it. It looks pretty, but let's say I were to ask her to make a cube in perspective. I think she'll struggle with that. Surprisingly, a cube. Or making something look like it's 3D. She's able to make silhouettes because she knows the image that something is supposed to be. She knows the image of what things look like. That if you do this, do that, you create a specific result. However, she doesn't not understand why putting those things together create that result. There is a level of understanding missing in her artwork, and this leads to her repeating tropes that she knows works. It's a common joke saying that a lot of Fifty Pop's characters, they have daddy issues or are like, oh, sad boys. And the reason I think she writes them like that is because she understands it works without knowing why it works. She knows fans like that, and maybe she herself also likes that trope. However, she does not understand why. And thus, without knowing why, she can't evolve the characters beyond that. Because in order to evolve, you need to understand. And sadly, she does not understand it, so she does not have the characters change. And she does not understand reason why characters feel real. She gets the surface level analysis of a character, and that's all she sees, from what I can tell. So, she is someone that can recognize patterns but does not understand why those patterns are the way that they are. She lacks understanding. And she's also a very prideful person. To those accoladed with her Twitter usage and current Blue Sky usage, she's very defensive of her work and who she is. Like, if you make like a comment just throwing a jab at one of her shows, she will write down like a 5-paragraph argument, like complaining about your opinion. And this comes from her strong emotions. Her artwork reflects that. While she does not understand, she definitely feels something, even though she doesn't understand that feeling. That's why with her artwork, it's very flowy and pops. It has a lot of expression to it, but not enough understanding. And that uncontrolled emotion is reflected in her actions. She is hot-tempered and impulsive. She's willing to throw a punch, however, is not able to take one. I remember with the Scott Coffin uh, when Scott Coffin ended up getting doxxed and it being revealed that he donated to several Republican uh, politicians, she joined into the dog pile in saying how he preferred, how supposedly Scott Coffin preferred his ideology over the well-being of innocent people. However, a lot of people jumped on her butt for it. Now, when she ended up getting doxxed for that as well, which please do not do that. But she ended up using that as a defense, saying, haha, huzzah, see, you don't have the moral high ground too. As though that somehow excused her behavior with when it comes to the handling of the Scott Coffin incident. She's willing to commit some serious mental gymnastics to justify her actions. Another bad example. When season 1 of Hazbin came out, Masquerade, it showed Angel Dusk and him being forced on by Valentino. And it was discovered that the storyboard artist that did the storyboard for it has a thing for rape, apparently. And people were justifiably very concerned and upset about that. Having someone who is into that storyboard that. Now, Vivian Medrano, she ended up getting into the situation, trying to defend herself by saying, "Oh no! The guy that we had storyboard the scene, he's also a rape victim, and that's just like his way to process the emotions." When, by the storyboard artist's own word, he is not a rape victim. She just made that up in order to defend herself. That is just messed up on so many levels. If you take a look at your screen here, I have the scene from BoJack Horseman where he's getting chewed out because he needs to be better. Vivian Medrano says that she is inspired by BoJack Horseman and other shows, but this scene right here encapsulates her main problem. She does bad things and then tries to justify it to herself without improving herself. And I think this is also reflected in a lot of her characters. Her characters have this problem too. The characters don't be like terrible people and treat others as terrible, but then feel bad and then continue to do it later. Blitz, Angel Dusk, other characters, they do this all the time. They do bad things, feel bad about it, and think that makes it better. It does not make it better. You can't feel sorry about it and then do nothing about it. If you feel sorry about it, make up for what you did. Do the right thing and try to make amends, even if you're not forgiven. Well, where is she now? Well, shortly after the 2024 election, she ended up moving to Blue Sky as well, along with the Exodus. And on Blue Sky, I think she could pretty much just say whatever she wants. She has it so that you have to be a follower in order to check out her tweets on Blue Sky. And even now, like even recently, she is still very dogmatic with her behavior and reacts to like some nobodies even. Like you could be some guy with like 5,000 subscribers, say something like snarky or critique her work, and she might respond to your work, to your video or to your tweet, even though you're like you're just nobody. You're just some nobody, and she's focusing on just a random person. Because I think she is a very prideful person. I think that the fame of being the face of indie, or once being the face of indie, and having such a massive influence on the indie animation space went to her head. She put so much. She thought, I am the Vivian Medrano, the creator of Hazbin Hotel, a changer in the industry. And so she placed so much value upon herself that she thinks that she's somehow higher than she thinks she is. She's not thinking of herself with sober judgment. And this, you know what the sad thing is? She needs validation. Like, she wants the applause of the fans. She wants the applause of the show. She loves the reward. She loves the stage, the awe of the people. But she cannot find satisfaction within herself. She needs approval. But unfortunately, no amount of approval from others will be a good substitute for finding love within yourself. You need to find love within yourself. This this is I don't hate Vivian Medrano. I do not hate her. I'm frustrated with her because I can see that there is passion in her, something far greater than she gives herself credit for. But she doesn't choose that. And that's why I just feel sad for her. I truly do. It's constantly needing approval, constantly feeling like the world is against you. It's not a healthy lifestyle. It is a sad existence. And needing other people to give you validation, to give you approval, it is a painful existence. Trust me, I know. Constantly needing love, it is exhausting and painful. But you gotta find love within yourself. Truly. Because you are enough. You are worth love, and you are worth loving yourself. Uh, so let's wrap things. Let's wrap things up here. What are my thoughts on the fandom? I think they're innocent and misguided. I do not hate the fandom. I find them frustrating, but I do not hate them. And same with Midrano. I do not hate her. I find her frustrating, but I do not hate her. Because they feel like innocent people that have simply just that are misguided. These people, they are worth loving, but they don't understand that they themselves have something within them that is worth loving, and so they must find validation externally. I do, I truly do not suggest harassing them. The best way to deal with a fandom like this is to simply ignore them. Because if you try to engage, it'll make their dogmatic behavior worse. If you try to criticize them, it's gonna make things worse. And this video might entirely be making the situation worse. I admit that. Maybe what I'm doing is making things worse. But I must say what I know to be true. Man. Yeah. That's what I say. I suggest just ignore the show. If you don't like the show, don't watch it. So yeah, that's about everything I have to say now. May God be with you.